I'm back. Hi everyone, I'm back with a new setup. I'm filming from my new phone. You haven't seen me in like a week and a half because my phone died, and then I was going through some like sadness things and just wasn't in a place to film. We'll talk about mental health in another video when I'm up for it, but I'm slowly feeling like myself again, so I thought it was time to do another Ask Pam Anything video. I'm still going back to the questions from that first Ask Pam Anything video, so post them there, post them on this one. I'm literally keeping track on a Word document. I will get to as many as I can. I will butcher your names. It's part of my charm. It's because I don't know how to pronounce a name until I hear it, but when I read it, it's just I will butcher it, but like out of love. Let's start with one I just saw. This one is from Michaela Hartline. I hope I said that correctly. Thank you, Michaela. And the question is, do you have any funny, cool stories about meeting celebs doing comedy? And the short answer is yeah. I've been so lucky that I've gotten to meet and work with so many that have been kind and wonderful, a few that have been dumpster fires. Probably don't want to get myself canceled talking about that, so I'm only going to talk about the positive situations. 2 years ago, I got to do a gig with Ed Asner and Matthew Broderick, and got to know like the Asner family and the work they're doing around disability inclusion, and like loved them, loved him. It was such a fun night, but I think I'm going to narrow it down to the two stories that I think stand out the most to me. One was that time I did a gig that Fetty Wap also did, so that was hilarious. I'll link the photo in right here. My other favorite is my senior year of college. I decided to take the train from my hometown in the Midwest, where I was going to undergrad, to New York City and couch surf for 3 weeks of my school break with friends and do as many shows as I could. And I had been a Midwest comic. Like, I hadn't met famous people. I never met a famous person. I had been doing comedy for a while at this point, and had definitely met some cool people, but nothing at like a crazy level. My like comedy mentor at the time hooked me up with a show at Gotham Comedy Club. I had no idea who else was on it, but I went to go do the show early on in comedy. I'd done it for a few years, but I was definitely still a newbie comic. And someone performed, and then I performed, and then, which I now know happens all of the time, but Midwest Pam at like 21 lost her mind when this happened. So the host got on, a comic came in from the doors and was just like standing in front of me, and the host got on and he was like, hey, we actually have a surprise comic for you this evening. You may have heard of him. He has his own show. Please give it up for Jerry Seinfeld. And because, first of all, he had stood inches in front of me, and I had like never had a moment like this in my life, I went full fetal position. Like, I just remember thinking like safety is on the ground. So I like curled up because it was so exciting that I did not know how to handle this. And I would never tell a comic this story at this point because it's so embarrassing on how nerdy I got. And one of the managers at Gotham was like, you're the cutest thing we have ever seen. And he was like, come away from the comics area, let's get you a good seat. So he like moved me to sit and watch it from a great seat. They knew that like I was a comic who had never done New York shows from the Midwest, that I was like a student, that I was, they like knew what was going on. And the staff were so sweet and funny and kind about it. And Jerry performed, it was hilarious. I loved it. He was testing new material. And then he left, and I was like, what do I need to do? Like, I need to go call my Jewish mother. Like, when you accidentally do a show at Jerry Seinfeld, you gotta tell your Jewish mother. So I left to go call my mom, and Jerry was standing right there, and he had caught the end of my set, and we ended up having he's a little bit awkward in real life, but we had a little awkward conversation, and I said, hey, if you ever need a 4'6" Jew with Tourettes syndrome to open for you, like, you know where to find me. And he goes, something tells me you're not that hard to find. And it was like a cute little meeting. I've since met him many, many more times. He probably has no idea who I am, but that's okay. That's how it works in New York City with comedy. But I think that was my favorite story, because I think that was the moment where I was like, oh, if I'm going to do comedy, I have to leave the Midwest and I have to go to New York City. Because if you can hang in New York City, like, you've got the chops for comedy. I moved out to the East Coast, I think I finished undergrad and then moved to New Jersey where I worked for a few years. And I remember being like, I can see my dreams, but they still feel so far away. There's so many times I would book like a 10 p.m. show in the city, living in New Jersey, and the show would start at 11. I wouldn't be on until 12, and then I'd miss the last train back. And I realized I had like overstayed my couch welcome on all of my friends' couches. So I finally, like 7 or 8 years ago, moved to New York and haven't looked back. This is a funny question from Stephanie Gagnon. Did I say that correctly, Stephanie? And the question is, did you ever slap somebody from Tourette's? Yes, so many times. In fact, I just met up with a friend of mine from boarding school I hadn't really seen in years. A few weeks ago in New York, we went for a COVID-safe outdoor dinner and drinks, and we reconnected, and I did not remember this story, but he told me the story that on his first day at our boarding school, it was our sophomore year. I'd been there already for a year. He was just starting, and he had met me earlier and been like, oh, this girl seems cool. And then we went into history class, and he was like, why is no one sitting next to her? She seems cool. So he sat in the seat next to me, and at that point, my Tourette's had me doing a lot of like, yeah, like this type of stuff, you know? And I, within seconds, just hit the crap out of him. And in the way he tells it, he was like, it hurt. I realized why people didn't sit next to you. It wasn't because they didn't love you. It's because it wasn't a safe zone. And in his mind, he loved it. He thought it was hilarious. But I did hurt him. I feel like I'm not supposed to say names. So to the guy in detention who I accidentally write in his manuals from Tourette's, was it though? It was from Tourette's. That was another one. But yeah, there have been so many times. It's why I like board early on airplanes, because when I get stressed or nervous, I can't always control where my arms and hands go. And people don't love it when you touch them, even if it's from a neurological disorder. Okay, I love this question. This question is from Brendan Reisner Linda. Brendan, thank you for this great question. I still do not know where to look on this phone, so I'll get used to it, I promise. What was your first stand-up gig and how did it go? So here's the thing. I found my journals from when I was a kid, and it was just stand-up. I mean, it was stand-up on stand-up on stand-up. I started doing stand-up at boarding school, first in a workshop on improv and stand-up, and then like at random bars and stuff. But I don't feel like I remember. I mean, I did like stand-up at the camp where I grew up at, but I remember my first like legit real gig. My first legit real gig was in college, in undergrad. I'd done a bunch of like little things, open mics, small shows, things like that. But I hadn't done like a real show with a massive audience and with a headliner who I respected. And one of my years of college, Pete Holmes came to my school. I love Pete. He recently had the show Crashing on HBO. He's such a nice human and so funny. And my school asked if I wanted to open for him. There was a whole saga of like me not getting into a play, and the play on opening night would have been, it was like a whole saga of I didn't get in the show, and the opening night of the show ended up being the night that I did the show and stand up. And like, if I'd gotten in the show, this would have never happened. So it all kind of worked out. It's one of my favorite messages about like failure and moving on and like finding opportunities even when things are hard. But my school offered me the opportunity to open for Pete. And it was like the place sold out. Like the auditorium there, it was free. Let's be honest, it was a couch show. But tons of my friends, but also like tons of people I didn't know. I worked on these jokes. It was the first time I like really felt confident in a set. Looking back at it, the set was awful, but I didn't know that then. Like Pete hung out with me beforehand and like gave me some feedback and like some tips. And I was supposed to do like 10 or 15 minutes to open for him. And he ended up letting me go longer because it was going so well. And it was like, it just was like that high. It was like that feeling of, like, this is it. Like, this is where I'm supposed to be. I was doing jokes about Tourette's and my height and my dating life and the way my brain works. And it went so well. And yeah, like I did it in front of a bunch of friends. That helps. I think the real test is, can you do like a stadium or an auditorium or a bunch of people where you don't know a single person? And does that go well? And yes, that does now go well in my life. But I do think it's okay early on to do a show in front of, at least with a group of people who care about you. At this point in my life, I would rather perform in front of 3,000 strangers than one person I know. That's something I'm working through. But after the show, Pete took me out to dinner and like gave me feedback and was like, you've got something, like you're good. And it was so wonderful. I don't think I've run into him since then. I kept hearing he was filming in the Village and just like had shows in other areas. There were so many times I'd get to my show and they'd be like, Crashing was here filming for the last hour and a half. But he deserves every ounce of fame. He's such a nice guy. I'm sure I was like an annoying college student, and I loved that he gave me feedback, kept in touch with me for a long time, by the way. I remember him proofing my website, and like just being a cool dude. So that was the first like real gig that I had, and I think that was a turning point in my comedy world. This next question is from, and again, I don't want to screw up your name, I'm going to try, but it's Yarrow Pixie. I think it's Yarrow Pixie. And the question is, do you ever get performance anxiety, and what do you do to overcome it? So yes, but not, I think I get it differently. Like, I did a gig a few years ago for 3,500 people with a celebrity. Like, it was a huge crowd, lots of energy, and I had some performance anxiety, but it was like so excited. I was like, I just want to get out there and do it. Let's do it. I get the scary anxiety when it's an audition or I'm performing in front of people who like have a say in my career. So like a comic who's a big name comic, if I know they're in the audience, or a producer, or I did a thing for like an NBC diversity showcase, and they took the first 200 comics in line in New York City, each got a minute. So any comic who wanted to audition, it was like a 9 a.m. audition at Gotham Comedy Club again. So they had us like camp out overnight if you wanted to be in the first 200. It was like 100 degrees out. We camped out in New York City by a dumpster. I was a hot mess, not even hot. I was just a mess. And you get a minute in front of people from NBC and you don't know who it is until you get inside. And I was in the first or second group of auditions. I think they took 20 or 30 of us at a time. And we get in and they go down the line and introduce themselves. And one of the guys was like, I book for Jimmy Fallon. Another person was like, I'm this for NBC. And I had a level of anxiety where I remember questioning, like, am I having a heart attack? Am I having a heart attack? It ended up going great. And my 1 minute, one of the dudes, the guy who books for Fallon, was like, oh my God. And I was like, oh, I either crossed a line or I'm gonna get a call back. And I did get a call back, and something little did come out of it. I've had some relationships and things like that. I didn't end up getting like through to the LA callbacks. That's okay. It was a great experience. I did get called back. And I got more time in front of the people later that afternoon. But at that point, I hadn't slept. I had slept outside of a dumpster. It was 3 p.m. I don't know that I even remembered my name. As someone with a movement disorder, like the less I sleep, the more Tourettes I have. So it just like wasn't a positive callback for me. Fine in the morning, not at the 3 p.m. callback. But I think for me, the anxiety, the way I get over it is I do it. Like, I don't care if I've got huge performance anxiety, I'm getting on that stage. However, I'm working really hard on getting out of my head, because I do struggle with getting on stage and I have like this inner monologue of like, oh, that joke didn't go well, you're in trouble, the rest of the set is gonna bomb, you're screwed. And like that could be happening while I'm performing. So I'm working hard to get out of that right now. And just like have the mentality of like, you're gonna have fun, it's gonna go great, like whatever happens, happens. So that is what I've been working on. But as far as performance anxiety, I kind of just lean into it. Like if I'm gonna have a little extra Tourette's because I have a little extra anxiety, that's fine. But typically once I'm on stage, that's my comfort zone and the anxiety goes away and I just have a good time. This next question is about my obsession with animals. If you follow me on any social media, like my Instagram is, I would say 80% me petting dogs. There have been friends who've been like, hey Pam, you wanna come over? And I've been like, I'm busy. And then they've been like, the dog is here. And I've been like, I'm on my way. I once had a birthday party where I only invited a dog. Granted, it was during COVID. It was just a few weeks ago, but best birthday ever. I invited my neighbor's dog over. We had the best day. He's a yellow lab. I'm obsessed with him. My mother is actually hopefully getting his sister as her dog. So yay, exciting. But this question is from Marta. I think I did say that correctly, but your last name I will butcher. It's Marta Mratankovic. Nope, not even close. I tried. Thank you. I love you. Thank you for this question. The question is, what's your favorite animal? And have you ever had a pet besides a dog? So I am an animal lover. I like once met a pig that I became, I would say, best friends with. I love I love animals. Growing up, we had at one point 3 dogs, 2 cats, and a bird. Midwest, but it was so lovely. So 3 cats, and all of them were rescues. The cats had all just like showed up at our door. I think the animals in the neighborhood were like, that house over there gives you good food and lots of love, and so they just like started showing up. So yeah, I had the bird until I think it just died like 3 years ago, and I think we got it when I was in kindergarten. So that bird Spike lived forever. My cat Judy Kitty lived until she was like 20. It's like the oldest living cat, maybe older, like 22. She was so old. By the time she died, we would go to the vet, and the vet tech would be like, I already warned the vet, because she was blind. She was like balding, and until she didn't want to live anymore, we were like, if she's not in pain, we don't care if she's ugly. She's my favorite cat, Judy. We called her Judy the B-I-T. I'm not going to say the word because I don't want to get demonetized, but Judy the, because she didn't like anybody. She didn't like anybody, but if that cat decided she liked you, you felt like $1 million. And when my Tourette's was at its worst and I was really struggling, that cat curled up with me so often. She didn't let me touch her, but she was with me. And that's what matters. So with that, post more questions below. Please, please, please hit like and subscribe. I'm so close to 10,000 on here. I want to hit it. I want to be able to like learn more and use that YouTube space. It's in New York. Once COVID ends, maybe they'll reopen. Thank you all for hanging out. Thanks for letting me be weird. Again, any question that you have, any and all questions, I love answering them, even the inappropriate ones. However, I can't get demonetized on here, so some of them I might have to answer just in like pure euphemisms. Thank you all for being you. You do you. Huh? You do you. Mwah. Happy COVID. That's a weird way to end this video, Pam.